Welcome today to the Learning With Lowell podcast. I'm your host, Lowell. Today we are joined with Ladan Jiracek, host of the Neural Implant podcast. He's gone from being the kid looking through the glass to now being in the field, doing research, leading masterminds, and being a part of the Neurotech revolution. Today we dig into neurotech, brain-computer interfaces, peripheral nervous system interfaces, Neuralink, and more. If you like this type of unedited, long-form content, please like and subscribe because every bit helps. Thank you everybody for subscribing, liking, and commenting thus far. It's a lot of fun to engage with you all, and I really just want to say a quick thank you. We're going to put out 2 to 3 new episodes every week as well. Let's stay curious to learn about Ladan, neurotech, and the future of brain-computer interfaces and peripheral computer interfaces in this episode of the Learn with Lowell show. Where is the action at in the BCI space, just in the United States, just narrowing it down, because there's stuff going on all over, but where's the action? Who are the main players right now?
Well, I would say it's the United States. So this was actually something that I learned the hard way. As you know, I was trying to do the work in Europe, in Germany especially, and there are great companies in Germany and great labs and everything like this. But just the with the sheer number, I would say more than half is in the U.S. I'd say maybe even 2/3 is in the U.S. But basically, in terms of the location, so I'm working on neurotechnology, bioelectronic medicine, which is kind of medical devices implanted into the nerves to not control the brain, but other peripheral nerves and especially organs of the body. Area that's really good is the Feinstein Institute in New York, and they're kind of specializing in this. But otherwise, places like Case Western, University of Washington, where I'm at, to University of Florida is some of the best places for this, and of course there's many more. It depends what flavor of neurotechnology, BCI, everything that you want.
Is there? So I think something I see a lot on your podcast and when you're guesting elsewhere is this discussion that over the last 5 years that more money's been going into this industry, which is good. I think even NIH has been pumping a little bit more in as well. Have we seen an uptick in innovation? Are you seeing a lot more innovation happening now with all this influx of money?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think of course, yeah, it's definitely getting better. I think it's kind of to do with computing power and just better designed, just being able to, with material science and everything like this, be able to design new electronics, hardware, and electrodes, materials, everything like this. So I think there's a lot more going on. And then obviously things like cochlear implants and other pacemakers, the tried and true things that people have learned to trust, have also kind of paved the way a little bit in terms of this kind of stuff. And it's a little bit more similar to that. You could be like, oh, it's like a pacemaker, but for this. So things we're especially well known for University of Florida for deep brain stimulation, and this is like a tried and true method to cure and help Parkinson's disease, shaking, essential tremor, and really it's amazing how it works. I've seen these surgeries. I've actually been in the surgery suite. I've seen people's brains up while they're alive and everything. It's crazy, but I see the before and after, and it's amazing. It's like literally it's almost like somebody's faking it. Before they're like shaking a lot, and then afterwards they stop, and it's like, was that real? Are you faking that? Because that was just an amazing transformation that I saw literally just before my eyes.
Is there any piece of technology right now that makes you feel like it's magic, like the deep brain stimulation? It's kind of like the Isaac Asimov quote, where it's like anything significantly advanced or just surprising, I guess. That makes it magic. I don't know why I'm saying that goofy.
Yeah. I mean, part of that, yeah. So there's, I guess, 2 parts of that answer. Part of the deep brain stimulation, on the deep brain stimulation side, it's really cool because they're also looking at it for kind of these almost like addictive behaviors, and it seems to be very good for that too. It just hits the right circuits, the right neural circuits, where you can calm a lot of these things down. So gambling, sex addictions, obesity, like food addictions, it can really help with that, a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Really? Wow,
it's more of these extreme cases versus oh, I'm just eating too much McDonald's, but if you really have a problem, that a compulsive need to do it, so it really helps with that. But another thing that's really fascinating and kind of unbelievable, I would say, is Kevin Tracy's work, again at Feinstein Institute in New York, and they found that inflammation, so like arthritis, this kind of stuff, can be improved with neuromodulation and actually vagus
Mm.
nerve stimulation. So basically stimulating on the neck, and you basically get rid of any autoimmune disorders or inflammation that you might have. And so that to me is kind of magical. Is that this almost, to me, what almost seems like a blood reaction, like the blood is reacting to something
Hmm.
and causes inflammation, but it looks like it's generated by the nerves as well. And so you can turn it on, turn it off, and there's been a lot of patients that have been helped with that very, again, very drastically, like from debilitation to having a normal functioning life.
Does that fall under the umbrella of peripheral? I would consider like peripheral brain computer interfaces, like that type of technology, that type of
Yeah,
biofeedback.
exactly. Peripheral nerve stimulation, and yeah, I mean, I think essentially if it's not going in the brain, then and somewhere else in the body in the nerves, then that would be that. Yeah, but definitely, like a lot of these things are less of an ask in terms of surgery. It's not like, oh, I'm cracking. Hey, let's open up your skull and I'm going to put something inside. You'll be like, I don't know, but like, hey, let's put something into your next to your throat, and implant there. That's a little bit more reasonable, I would say, and still kind of a big ask. But if your need is big enough, then you'll accept it.
What is it? What does it actually look like? How significant of a device is it?
There's different designs, of course, like each company, each lab and everything like this, they have their own ways to do it. But it can be a nerve cuff. So basically, it's just like a little like hand that wraps around the nerve, that's surgically implanted. And then a lot of times they have a what's called an implantable pulse generator. So it's like the computer and the electronics of it, and it's basically like a uh, the same one that's used in pacemakers. So I don't know, maybe the size of like one of those big, candy chocolate coin things, but maybe like three of those stacked, three of those, so um, I don't know, like a seashell size, and that's implanted into your upper chest, kind of by your clavicle, and so it can be completely. Implanted inside of your body, or you can even wear like wearable cuffs, so wearable technologies, like almost it'd be like a little collar that you might wear, and it really works. So it any type of form factor essentially.
And and the data on this is like it's significant in terms of an improvement on even on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the implanted ones are more significant because you're actually targeting the nerve, and it's a little bit more directed. The vagus nerve does connect to a lot of different things, so you can have different side effects. So a big one, for example, for the vagus nerve is you get kind of like a hoarseness or like kind of
Mm.
a scratchy feeling in your throat, and maybe a little bit like trouble speaking, or but it's not anything unreasonable. It may be like a small sickness or something like this, or a cough, or like almost like you're feeling a cough come on, and kind of a tingling. But yeah, it's significant, and they've had a lot of success with it. Obviously, it doesn't work for 100% of the people, but I think with more specific electrodes and more precise ways to stimulate, I think that would be improved.
Is there an avenue, um, like a like almost I think of this in a way of like a pillar of technology in BCI or PCI, peripheral computer interfaces, that you feel like doesn't get as much attention, but that if it had more innovation in it, it could be, for instance, the actual material that the electrode is made out of. I was reading some people that are working on a way to make it less reactive to the body, so it'll stay in longer. But that I imagine there's a lot of people trying to reinvent that wheel or like make that wheel even better. Are there areas that you find interesting that most people are not paying attention to in the space that you think could have more attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing that I'm like pulling out my hair where I'm just like, oh my god, why
Mm.
doesn't everybody just do this? My answer, I guess, would be uh, the best way to do it would be to make things smaller, because after a certain size, the body, it becomes biologically invisible. So the body doesn't see it as a threat, because in nature you would never experience, some kind of threat smaller than a certain size. And so a lot of times there are like biocompatible materials, or they may want to make it softer or blah blah blah. But I think just making it smaller is the actual thing. So is the key to a lot of these problems. That's being done a lot, actually. So it's nothing too new. And honestly, I really like the approach of Neuralink. Elon Musk's Neuralink is basically having these really, really thin threads that are sewn in, and I think it's kind of the the ideal way to do things. And it's been shown that you have really good results when you do something like that. You have a very, very thin thread that's sewn in, and then the body can heal that path of where that needle had gone. But then that very thin thread stays in there. And so, yeah, I mean, basically, it's not novel or new if Neuralink is doing it, right. I can't be like, oh, I like it, it's not cool, or it's unknown or something, obviously, because Neuralink is doing it. But I don't know, I think that is the best approach, actually.
Yeah, I'm not as deep as you are in the space, but when I was looking at Neuralink, I like their whole architecture seemed extremely beautiful, in the sense that it's it's basically like a hockey puck that you stick on your head, but it's an outpatient procedure. I love that, looking at Paradromics as like a contrast, like you have to have surgery to put that in, and it's really well embedded into the body. I think their current architecture is like it goes all the way down from the neck into like your chest, kind of like a pacemaker. Where Neuralinks, for the most part, I think it's just like a little hockey puck that sits on your head. They can just pop it in and out. And so I imagine like the upgrading of the sensors and stuff like that like you'd have less obsolescence of technology because you could upgrade it, but also at the same time it's easier to get into a wide variety of people. Like, how many neurosurgeons exist in the United States? Like the cost of getting a neurosurgeon's time, like I imagine that's like $250,000 just to get like an hour of their time. And that's assume it's only gonna take an hour. So you can just see like that logarithmic increase in just getting it out there to people. And then your point as well, the like sewing it in there, the fact that they're using like their Tesla experience of building machine learning to specifically like thread through to cause the least damage as possible to get the most bang for their buck in terms of like neural connectivity. I thought that was really elegant. I think Paradromics to some extent is kind of like they have like a crap ton of sensors, and it's kind of like, well, they're just like gonna ingest it all in. But I don't like, it's like really cool technology on Paradromics' part, in my opinion. And so I'm curious to hear your thought on this, but like it's not all that scalable in terms of like getting into people in a mass way, where Neuralink seems very scalable and controllable and upgradable, which I think is all really good things, especially if we're having Moore's law every couple, like 18 months or whatever. You can imagine like you get something put into yourself in February, by the end of the year, you can't keep up. Like, there's something better that would have helped you even further, and you have to go under surgery again for Paradromics architecture. But I'm curious, how do you compare and contrast between those two architectures in your mind?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll see how well the Neuralink stuff actually pans out, and if they can do that hockey puck size thing, and there are some issues with that, but definitely, I think that is the correct approach. And I mean, having an extremely skilled surgeon, of which there are not, infinite amounts in the world. You might only be able to count it on one or two hands in the world. And yeah, so it's much better to have like some kind of automated process, like what Neuralink was, proposing is some kind of robotic thing where you just click one button, and some, decently skilled nurse or something like this, somebody, who knows medical things, but doesn't have to be like a neurosurgeon trained for 2 decades or something like this in the art. I think that it's a much better way to do things, and it's also much cheaper. So having kind of this automated process, it's a little bit like a LASIK eye surgery, and where it's a little bit automated, and that's a few $1,000, which is pretty reasonable. But a deep brain stimulation can be $150,000, and but a lot of that isn't just the surgeon; it's the actual device itself, and then hospital fees and stays and everything like this. If you are staying around in the hospital for a week, that can get very expensive too. But yeah, I think it's in the end, we'll probably need both, and we'll probably we wouldn't be able to get to wherever we want to go without both. And I really do like the Paradromics approach of just put in a crap ton of channels and let God sort them out, versus being like, oh, we have two channels that are working, and like let's figure out what's going on from there. And it's better to throw away, to have too much data than too little. You can always throw away data. So I think that's really cool. But so that is really improving things, I think, and it's been very exciting for me to watch them, their technology. I think it's great. I think it's great, but it has its pros and cons, as everything.
Is there anything about the Neuralink's technology plan that you think isn't feasible or that won't work out as well as people hope?
I think so. So they want to have that puck, there's a problem with basically the leads going into this, like, I guess, Bluetooth device that would be able to send information, everything like this outside the skull. So you wouldn't have to have anything going through the skin, which is of course a source of infection for a lot of people. I'm a little bit skeptical about that actual portion, and a big part is if there's going to be migration. So if that thing's going to move around over time, let's say you ride a roller coaster or something like this, and your brain's always moving. Actually, it's always kind of like jiggling around. And so how much would that, would it go somewhere else? Would that puck go somewhere else? Because it didn't seem too secured, actually. And also the data processing, and because you're taking in, you're essentially, I think they said this in Paradromics, it was like it's the equivalent of like 2,000 simultaneous streams of Netflix or something like that, some just ridiculous number. And we don't really have any hardware. People don't really have any, like server farms, they have that kind of hardware that can process that kind of data. But like you and I don't have any like personal electronics that can really handle this amount of data. And then they want to put it, something like that, inside the body and have it battery powered and not create a lot of heat and all this kind of stuff, and then send all that data out. It's a bit of a stretch, I think, and that's probably the thing that's going to be most lagging, in my opinion. The other stuff might come first, but we'll see. I don't know so much about that. I don't know so much about like ASIC design, like specialized circuits, specialized chips, and there could be some clever way to do that could crunch those numbers without generating a lot of heat or draining a lot of power. But yeah, but otherwise, I mean, I think it's pretty good. But again, you're dealing with the body and the FDA and all this kind of stuff. So the body is kind of an unknown thing, and you get some weird stuff going on sometimes. And you don't even expect it. And then the FDA too, it's got to protect the population, so it wants to make sure that everything's like very, very good looking and not going to harm anybody or cause any issues or something like this. So they are on the CYA, cover your ass side of things. So they might be slowing down things too. But I don't know. So there's a few things, yeah.
Mm-hmm. When I hear about really big channels, I always think about heat sink. Like that's, heating up your brain a little bit. Everyone has had, like, if your temperature gets even like a degree, you feel that in your head, and it is not comfortable. And so whether it's Paradromics, Neuralink, or whatever, I always look at like how they handle the heat sinks, because that'll be, I mean, you could have all that power, but at a certain point, it's like you're saying, it's kind of redundant. Like just find like the local maximum, just kind of like be happy with that, versus like just like cooking the brain. How do you see like deep, like I think of it like the hockey puck or Paradromics kind of being like generalists in a sense, where they have a bunch of wires and technology to be put into the skull, and we'll be able to do a lot with it. But then at the same time, we have some that are doing deep brain stimulation, which is a very focused application of BCI or like the vagal nerve, the PCI is the acronym I'm going to use for it. How do you see them integrating? Do you think do you think like there'll be like one like hockey puck or a Paradromics like device, and they all kind of like weave together into one? Or would a person who's had significant harm in their life need several devices to maintain, get back to full functionality?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I have heard about these kind of meshes that you'd be able to almost link up a bunch of these devices. That would be really cool if they could work in concert, and they don't have to, they can pull in different sensor readings or neural signals on different portions, and it'd be just that much more effective. But yeah, I mean, again, like I think you're going to need a combination of this, and different companies are going to have different approaches and telling you that, like, okay, ours is the best way. You should do the mesh, or we should do one single thing, or our thing is the most important thing. Like if you have, Parkinson's person that, is an amputee and is obese or something like this, you got like 3-4 things going on at once, then, maybe there's an order of operations, and you kind of, decide like, okay, let's do this first one. And then maybe they're all very expensive, but that's the most important one. That's the best quality of life. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this mesh is honestly the most futuristic sounding, and but maybe again also the hardest to pass and prove that it's actually working. Like, how do you prove that? I don't know. Three specific devices are helping and improving and not harming the patient versus four specific devices, and if they're in different places, I don't know. I think it'd be a regulatory nightmare, honestly.
Hmm. That's fair. Transitioning back to yourself, what's the thing or combination of things that really you find beautiful about this space? Is it the, if you could like really dissect it down, is it the device? Is it the data? Is it I mean, I imagine there's like a combination of things, but I'm curious, like what are the elements? Do you spend time looking at like patents or the architecture of technology? I'm just kind of curious, like what do you really love about it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did like kind of an internship during my undergrad in nanotech and then this neurotech and I don't know, I just kind of liked it. I feel like I was kind of imprinted on me, and you're kind of like uh ready for, I don't know, some kind of cool new thing, and that's kind of what came up. But for me, what's really interesting is, I guess, the hardware side of things, like the actual
Mm,
building it and designing of electrodes and actual devices. The code and data, it actually doesn't interest me at all. I know it's important, but you couldn't get me to code at all. But I really like kind of this building and design especially, and testing those physical things out. And then I really like the business side of things too. I think it's really interesting, and it's very important to not just be like some lone PhD student or lone graduate students working somewhere and on something that nobody will ever see, but actually like give it to the world, and bring it to market, and hopefully make a lot of money. I mean, my theory is, if you're uh, making money, that means you're helping people for the most part. And so if you can make a lot of money, that's good too, and bring something great into the world. Be the next, I don't know, deep brain stimulator or pacemaker or something like this. I think that'd be great.
yeah. Is there is there a design that you do think is I don't know the phraseology in terms of like how you think of things. Do you see a design, the brain simulation, the Paradromics chip, or whatever that exists? Do you see it as beautiful, or like what? How do you describe the feeling when you're looking at it and you're breaking it apart? Is it beauty? Is it elegance? Like how do you describe it? And like kind of like a meta way. I'm kind of like examining you a little.
Yeah, I think elegance would be maybe
Mm,
the most apt descriptor, but I think clever also, and a lot of
mm,
times to me clever also means like simple, but like simple in a way that like encompasses a lot of things, and maybe you have like one design feature that you shaped it a certain way, and that actually affects like four or five things, and it's like, oh wow, by doing that shape, for example, then we saved a lot of issues with this and this and this, and so I think that's really good. So yeah, elegant and clever to me is like that's the perfect combination.
do you see those a lot in this space, or is it like a rare event, like once a month, once a quarter, that you see something clever like that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, a lot of this stuff is pretty basic, I would say, and there's not
Mm,
anything that I'd be like it's maybe uninspired, but like it's also based on the limitations of what you can do. And so you can't be having cool swoops and stuff like this on something if you don't have the capability to make it. But yeah, I would say it's a more rare thing, and once in a while I do see something that's like, wow, this is really nice. And but yeah, it depends.
what was one of them for the last like 6 or so months, or what was the last time? What was it?
Yeah, so there's some cool, I don't know, like three-dimensional electrodes that use novel materials. I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get, but
Go
I
deep.
thought that was
As long as you're excited about it, I want to hear about it.
yeah, so basically, there's a material called liquid crystal polymer, and this is something that they
Hmm.
use in electronics a lot and electronics packaging. So whenever you see like a chip, like one of those like little bug-looking things, that's what it's coated in, and it's really cool. It's biocompatible, and it's very resilient against chemical attacks, and that's exactly what your body's trying to do is chemically attack it. And so you can do some really cool like three-dimensional shapes with this material, and I don't know. I just think it's really clever. You can take advantage of a lot of cool features with it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's been really interesting.
What's the benefit of the customization and 3D shapes?
Yeah. So okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the specific application of it. I mean, so that's the thing is like different applications. Brain computer interfaces.
Hmm.
You're gonna have different design compared to peripheral nerves compared to something else. This one was actually a cornea implant, and so into the eye, and so you're basically reading from the nerve signals. The nerves that are at the back of the eye, and so you basically want to shape it the same shape as the eye because you don't want to have like flat planar, kind of discs and or have a bunch of them or something like this. So if you can like kind of mold it, it's a really clever way to make sure that you get into as much contact as possible. And I don't know, just the way that they do it is really interesting. So again, I'm mechanical engineering by training, so we were doing a lot of like dies and presses and kind of like forming of like metal. So it's kind of going back to that a little bit and bringing together all these fields that you might not even think about, kind of almost like making a steel bowl and making a neurotechnology kind of might have the same fundamental principles behind them.
Do you have like a Tony Stark DIY lab? I mean, I think you're in a lab as well, so you might be able to just play with these things a lot. But do you have a lab that you get to just experiment and try new things like this a lot?
No, I don't. I mean, one day I would love to. A lot of this stuff is really expensive. So, even
Yeah,
stuff that you
imagine.
wouldn't think is, it'd be like, oh, I need this pump. And like pumps, how much should pumps cost? Oh yeah, 40, $50 or something like this. No, like more like $1,000 or $2,000 or something like this. And you got to get the special one that does this and this. And so a lot of this stuff, to get a good lab, I think you'd need at least $20,000, and depends what you're doing, of course. But yeah, I mean, that is a dream. And I have lots of non-neurotechnology related ideas that I want to do, but I also need help doing it. So a lot of times it is a little bit like I need to find somebody that's like an expert in it or that could help me out, and I could fund it. Right now I don't have so much disposable income to like set up some experiments, some crazy idea experiments, but definitely one day it is a dream of mine.
Well, I hope you achieve it. I know one thing that you do a lot is you take what you've learned and you give back to other people. I think it's in your mastermind groups. I know we wanted to talk about that a little bit. So could you set the table with what are these mastermind groups, and what did you want to give to people in making them?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, with the Neural Implant podcast, I got to know a lot of people. I think I've had more than 200 guests on 200 episodes, and got to know a lot of consultants and companies, and actually in conversations with these companies, the CEOs of these companies, I was seeing like, wow, they don't know. Like I know I can help them. I could help them, with a lot of their problems. They're looking for, X person or advice on this kind of thing. And I could link them up. And so I started doing this. I started doing actually during the pandemic, I was doing these masterminds, or kind of these peer support groups for neurotechnology executives. So it was the leaders of these companies, and it's kind of a lonely position for them a lot of times, and they have to put on a brave face to employees and to investors, and sometimes they don't know some things, and they don't really know who to ask either. And maybe there's a cool conference that comes along once in a while that they can find out some answers. But what do you do in between that space? And especially during COVID, things were shut down. They didn't really know when the next time was that they'd be able to find out some information about something. So basically, I put these two groups of people together, and we would meet with the executives regularly, and kind of develop a rapport, a good relationship between all of us. We were a small group, 4 to 6 people, and so we'd get to know each other very well, and each other's trials and tribulations, and give each other advice. Be like, oh, one guy might be like, oh, I did the same thing, a year ago, and this is what I would recommend, or don't use these guys. These guys will, waste your time, or so it's a nice way to get trusted advice. And then I would bring on consultants too to have them give advice, and try to sell their services, but at the same time give some free value. And then if the people liked them, if the executives liked them, they could hire them. If not, then not. But it was very valuable. So I saw this kind of it's a connector role, and not a lot of people have a public Rolodex with over 200 names on there, and so there's not so many people that can do this, and also that have the time and willingness to do this, because that's another thing. It's quite time intensive too. So yeah, I love it. It's a lot of fun, and I put it on pause for a little bit, the mastermind, but I really miss it, and it's just nice to know what's going on everywhere and have your finger on the pulse of everything. So it's a great thing.
How do you I think I do think you if I remember right, you charge for it, which makes sense because it makes people take it more seriously. So then what are all the criterion if I'm a neurotech innovator about to start a company? What are like how do you assess me to know I'm good for the group? Like what do you look for?
Yeah, so I do charge people, and that's also so people take it seriously, and it's also a filtering mechanism. I mean, I look for companies. It's kind of I like to say between 5 and 50 employees, so not an idea or a
Mm,
concept, or maybe they have a prototype, but they've kind of already gotten funding and they're a little bit more established, so they've been around for a few years, something like that, and maybe they have products or something like this too. So that kind of, especially with the payment that gets rid of the guy who just graduated and maybe they won a business plan competition and have $20,000 and are trying to get this through, but but so a little bit bigger companies that can move the needle. If I give them a regulatory expert like how to get through the FDA, then that will have definite results for them. Versus sometimes with kind of these more seed stage ones, it's a little bit more difficult. But I'm
mm.
thinking about expanding it, but in both directions actually. So kind of the higher end, 50 plus employees or 50 million dollar plus company valuation, and then kind of the more seed stage, less than $1 million company valuation, less than 5 employees or something like this. So yeah, it's nice. So I think everybody needs help, and everybody uh you could I like to say that the answer's already there, and you already know somebody who knows somebody that knows the answer to it, and you just have to find that person. And it's all been done before. You're not doing anything completely novel. You're not reinventing the wheel. So just find that person and save yourself hundreds of hours.
That makes sense. So I think well, this is a bit biased, but I think a lot of people have something where they're either very interested or they are very passionate about it, so they can make their kind of their own mastermind group about it if they just were a little bit more focused. What would be your advice for someone who, you know, has an interest like yours to start something, and maybe they don't have a podcast, but maybe they're just like a leader in their space, like software engineering, customer service, whatever the heck they care about, and they want to do something like that. What would be your advice to get it going?
Yeah, so the way I did it, I mean, I knew a lot of people, right? Like I was in the field and I had the podcast, so I had a reason, I had an excuse to network with people. And I saw these two groups of people, almost like a school dance, right? Like the men and the women, and they both want to dance and they both like, but they don't know who is good and which one to trust, and like it's a little bit awkward maybe too, and so I'm just kind of the one bringing them together, and so I already knew those groups of people. So for me, it was a little bit easier. It was an easier sell. Like when I came up with the concept, I was like, okay, I already have like 10 to 15 consultants that I can talk to. And then I have 10 to 15 companies that I can talk to and just reach out to them, see who's interested. And obviously the consultants are usually more willing to do it because, they'd be making money and promoting themselves. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of, that's how I would do it. If you're not in such a position, I mean, it was kind of interesting for me because I wasn't very experienced. I'd never run a neurotech startup, and I'd never been an executive, so it was kind of a unique situation in my case. But usually it'd be more logical to be an expert in the field if you're like a plumber or something like this. You've been plumbing for a decade or something like this, and you know some people in the field, and you could even start meetings and have it be free, and then eventually people might understand the value and see that it's worthwhile. So yeah, I think that could be good. And honestly, it's amazing. I'm always amazed how much value they got out of it, and then like how little I spoke, and sometimes it just be a sentence or an idea or something like this, and that could make the whole difference. Like for the entire year, that would literally pay for itself and everything for the whole year. So it's amazing like how little is needed sometimes.
Makes sense. And then you just run it through Zoom. Very simple setup.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have like a Slack channel for them or anything, or it just Zoom like every 30 days or so?
Yeah, so we were doing Zoom every 2 weeks, and I originally wanted to do a Slack channel, but they were saying they were slacked out, so that they didn't want to do that. So
That's fair.
we just did email, and for the most part, it worked out well. We didn't send too many emails. Maybe once in a while, we'd be like, oh, this is an article that we talked about, or here's an introduction to this and this person. So I mean, including like not including reminder emails of like, hey, the Zoom thing's starting. I would say 10 emails a month or something like this
Hmm.
for the whole group. So it wasn't spamming them or anything like this. And everybody's busy, and they're running companies that have like 30 people, so they can't be talking to you every day. But it was good. It was very nice.
It sounds powerful. Leading with this, like Mastermind in the future, what do you see the next 5 years being like for this space, or
For the
peripheral
for the
or
mastermind
brain?
or for Neurotech?
Neurotech.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, and it's going to expand a lot. We didn't really talk about, or we did. Do we talk about this on air? The investment going into the field recently, and so 2021 was like a record year, also because of what was going on with central bank and low interest rates and everything like this. People wanted to put their money into somewhere safe, but we'll be seeing the fruits of all these investments, which is like record investments into neurotech companies. Hopefully, within the next 5 years, there's some really promising companies out there, and I think it's just going to get more and more mainstream. People are not going to be like, "What? What are you talking about?" It's going to be almost like a pacemaker, like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard about that," or "I know somebody that has that." Maybe signs will start popping up and be like, "Oh, you can't use this." Um, Scanner at the airport if you have a deep brain stimulator or some kind of neurotech device, and it'll be a little bit more normalized. But it is a slow growing thing. It's not like computers where it doubles every year and a half, where our smartphones are getting much more amazing. But it'll be slow growth, and maybe, yeah, maybe in 5 years might be a doubling by then. So nothing too crazy, but slowly get into the public consciousness a little bit more.
So Laden's law of neurotech would be every 5 years it doubles.
Yeah. So actually, there is one. It was already done. Unfortunately, I was scooped. 5 years before this conversation. This is the Stevenson's law, and so it's basically a doubling of the number of channels in a
Mm.
neurotech device every 7 years. So it's much slower than Moore's law, which is what every 1.5 years or 2 years. And so, but there is a doubling. So there is kind of like this light at the end of the tunnel of like, okay, at some point we're going to get really, really amazing results on everything.
This actually reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you earlier. When it comes to like a Neuralink or Paradromics that is, like in my mind, a little bit more service level versus like something that would have affect Parkinson's, is are they still able, with the right technology and software, able to stimulate in your mind the like deep brain stimulation, or do you need deeper electrodes to ensure that you're hitting those areas right?
What are you saying? So with like a paradromics or something like this? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so deep. It's literally like
Okay.
centimeters long. It's like 5-6 centimeters, and none of these other probes at this point do that. I know paradromics would not be able to do that. That being said, I do think a Neuralink could do something like that. There's no reason they couldn't. It's really just a question of lengthening their threads, and the needle that they use to sew it in could be bigger and more robust and everything like this. And that's kind of my pet theory is this is the actual I guess secret sauce is how Neuralink is going to make money, is they're going to go eat Medtronic's lunch with these kind of more deep brain stimulation things, and kind of like Starlink. It's like, oh, we're gonna go to Mars, but that's not really the business plan. The business plan is to send up a bunch of satellites and sell people internet in places that they wouldn't be able to get internet with Starlink. So I think that's kind of my Neuralink version of Starlink.
Hmm. That makes sense. So then there was this like keystone thing I wanted to ask you. I've been reading more about just the effects of stem cells. Like it feels like it's starting to catch up to the potential of what exists. And one of the things that really interested me about BCIs, and actually as I've learned and listened to you talk about peripheral computer interfaces, like that sounds really, really exciting as well. But how do you see, like, who do you think is going to win the race to giving people uh, control over their bodies again? Like the stem cells that are giving people the ability to walk now, or the brain computer interfaces that are coming out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow the stem cell
Mm,
field that much, so I don't really know much about it, and biology and everything like this. I understand it. It doesn't. I don't. It doesn't fascinate me that much. The stem cells and everything like this. But I have heard about amazing things that are being done, and great progress. And then I think stem cells. It's difficult too because you almost have like a foreign biological system. So that can be a little bit difficult regulatory wise, and I don't know. I mean, uh, maybe in the end it will be a combination of the two, and you can repair things to an extent, but maybe not. So I have heard about a lot of neurotech devices, brain computer interfaces that have stem cells implanted in. They have like a gel layer or something like this, so it's seeded with stem cells, and the results of that were not amazing. They're okay, I guess. Better than the standard, but not like so much better that everybody's immediately rushing to it. But uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would be cool. I think that the big question is like the source of stem cells. Where do you get them, and get them in the by the pound, pretty much.
Yeah, makes sense. In one of your talks, I heard you discuss on how right now we're more like stop signals, like a go stop in terms of like what we can regulate in the brain, and eventually we're gonna have the point where there's like we can see the different cells, etc. What do you think is the limiting factor on differentiating cells and action electrode types in the brain? Is it channels? Is it a sensor? Like our sensors aren't strong enough, etc.
Yeah, for sure. I think a big part. So I think there's multiple layers to it, right? So
Hmm.
so right now it's a question of channels. So a lot of our probes, deep brain stimulation as an example, they have 16 channels, and you're trying to almost like play a piano symphony, wearing gloves, or even like using your forearms or something like this. And there's only so refined or so good that you can do that, even if you're really good. So more channels does allow that, like kind of more being able to hit individual notes, and not hit the other ones, hit the right notes and not hit the wrong
Hmm.
notes. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now. But there's also the question of cell types. So there are excitatory neurons, inhibitory neurons, and like hundreds of different other neurons. I had a podcast episode with a retinal expert, and he's saying like there's dozens of types of the actual neurons in the retina. And I think he was saying, I think we're going to find out that it's the same way in the brain. So there might be like 12 different types, or 15 different types of actual neurons. And you can't stimulate them all, because it just it creates chaos. It's almost like there's different types of cars on the street, and if you have a bunch of fire trucks going one way, and suddenly the fire trucks have to go through. But if you just throw all the cars on the road at the same time, then you kind of get chaos. But maybe you need to have only the fire trucks go through at a certain time, and so you can control that. So there's like a cell type controllability, and unfortunately, with electricity and stimulation, it's very difficult to be very selective about that. So something that's very promising right now is called optogenetics, and you can basically transfect a nerve to react to light, and to be stimulated with light. And you can be specific about which types of neurons get this too. So excitatory, or you get the fire truck neuron only responding to green light, and another one to red light. And so you get this kind of green light red light game, and maybe a little bit more specific. So those are the kind of the two layers that I see, is like you have the channel number, and then later the cell type.
That makes sense. Is there there's a startup that I think it was like Lou Jepson or something, that's working with light, right, in brain computer interface. I don't know if there's multiple groups working on light regulation in cells and differentiation in that way. I don't know if there's other hidden gems like that out there.
Yeah, I don't follow this field as much. I
Mm,
like the electrical stimulation side of things, but
yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of startups, there are a lot of labs working on this, and the issue right now is FDA approval. Basically, you have to put a virus in and transfect the cells to express this protein, and then that protein changes the functioning of the cells. So that's kind of it hasn't been done before. This kind of thing hasn't been approved before by the FDA, and it's kind of a big ask. And if you were to try to sell that to the average person on the street, or in a clinic or something like this, then they might be quite skeptical about it. So I think that's the big hurdle at this point. But I have also heard that this could be overcome pretty soon, and that maybe the FDA is taking a closer look at something like that.
Are there FDA experts in brain computer interfaces that you lean on or talk to? Like I don't know if they have like a newsletter or something for people who are like kind of nerdy on these things.
Yeah, I don't know about a newsletter. the people that I've heard really good things about is MICRA, which is MCRA, and they have a lot of good people who formerly worked at the FDA, and so they have insider knowledge about what they're looking for and everything like this. And so that's a company, that's a consultancy that I really like, and that's actually one of the ones I really like to lean on with the mastermind, because the members really love those guys.
Makes sense. So I'm going to differentiate into more personal questions just now. So I've been asking this question to people because I used to think that like there was like one, like more or less like one or two channels for like what happiness means to people, but apparently like it's quite a kaleidoscope what happiness means to people. So I'm curious, when you think of happiness, how do you describe it? Like, what does it mean to you?
I think it's like being who you're meant to be, or kind of I don't know, like following your path, I guess,
Hmm.
like your destiny or something like this. And I do believe in destiny, or I do believe in kind of like you're built a certain way, and it'd almost be like so I'm a duck farmer. I have ducks, and they're just so happy in the water, and they need it. Like honestly, they'll die if they don't get enough water, not just for drinking, but they need open bodies of water. But they're also just really happy in it, and that's kind of, I think that's happiness, is like doing the thing that you really like and are almost built for, and almost being like a duck in water, where you're just kind of in your natural place, and so there's all different types of people. So you could be lazy on a beach, or building something, or fixing up a hot rod or something like this. So whatever makes you happy. Yeah.
And well, do you remember the moment when you knew that neurotech was going to be that for you? Was it just like working in a lab on the chips back in, I don't know, like Idaho or some northwestern state?
Yeah. I think it was when I graduated. So I went to Germany to do my master's, and I finished, and I was looking for jobs there, and I really wanted to stay in Germany, and I was looking for jobs, and it was basically nothing really looked good to me, and nothing really caught my attention. Like, yeah, I want to spend a few years doing this. And I didn't need the money that much. Like, yeah, I was short on money, but like I wasn't starving or anything like this, so I wasn't about to take anything on. But yeah, it was pretty much then. Then I'm like, okay, well, I think I need to get back into this brain computer interface stuff, because that's the only thing that's kept my attention for the last few years. And I guess I have lots of ideas, but there are some kind of underlying, themes in my ideas, and some ideas that linger for many years. And I was like, well, I think I need to go into the PhD, because I want to do research. I want to invent something, and I also don't want to just be a cog in a machine. I want to like create something. I want to build something for myself. And so yeah, that's pretty much when it happened. And that was it wasn't a moment. That was a period of about 2 months, 3 months,
Hmm.
where I was like figuring this out and realizing for this for myself. So um, yeah, sometimes it's kind of these slow realizations.
Yeah. I think sometimes people feel like there needs to be an aha moment or something, where most times it's like a slow increase in temperature, kind of like the frog story, where then you slowly get cooked and you change to something else. Um, do you do you seek actualization at all in what you're doing, like to be the best? I guess similarly to how you described happiness, it sounds like actualization, like being yourself and doing what you want to be doing. Which, if like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like actualization. Um, yeah, is that?
Yeah, I don't really. I guess I don't really think about what that word means, and
Mm,
it's kind of it seems unattainable, and that's
yeah,
like, okay, self-actualization. Like when I was explained to me, it was like, oh, okay, like only a few people have ever attained that. That's like the pinnacle of being. Um, but I mean, as for trying to be the best, not necessarily. I'm actually kind of indifferent to that, but I realize that I'm in such a small field, or such a niche. And this is again what I realized when I was looking for jobs in Germany, is like, man, I'm in such a niche that there's like a few dozen people that are doing this in the world, and exactly what I'm doing in the exact niche. And so, and then everybody has their different approaches. So yeah, you're going to be probably the best at something, and you have like a perfect approach in certain ways. So in a certain aspect. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really just following happiness, and that kind of having that as, your North Star, the guide that's taking you somewhere. And you know, it's also, but it's like a long-term happiness. It's not like cocaine, you know, happiness. It's like kind of uh what makes you feel fulfilled, I guess. So yeah, maybe the self-actualization. And yeah, right now it feels great. Like it's kind of, I still feel kind of in the training aspect of things. I'm still being trained. Obviously the PhD is kind of a very formal training to be like a scientist. Um yeah, but I definitely feel like I'm on the right path. So it feels good.
Yeah, congrats. That's amazing, especially since I think a lot of people in our age bracket kind of feel like they. I mean, there's a sizable section that just feel like they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And I always recommend people just do the Ben Franklin thing where they sample out a bunch of stuff. Looking back on those 2 months, was there anything that made it easier for you to slot in that you'd recommend other people kind of look out for if they're looking to find their way?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the 2 months of me trying to figure out like what I want to do, like a lot of times you have an idea, or you may even have like two separate ideas or opposite ideas, and but you're trying to get them to fit, or you're trying to like you're trying to get a few different things to work out. And yeah, sometimes there's a solution, you know, sometimes there can be a way to move forward. But I guess yeah, just keep chewing on it. I think a big thing is talking to people. A lot of times, you know, you kind of get in a loop in your head, but it's nice to have this outside perspective, and also a way to introduce new information, new data into your loop that you can, you know, then cycle through on your own. But it's nice to talk to people and you know, get their perspectives and advice and everything like this. Not that you have to take it, you know, but it is nice to you know, get new data. Uh, Put into the system.
Makes sense. Is there anything you're currently reading?
Yeah, so uh I don't even know what book I'm reading on the Kindle right now. Apparently it's not very interesting, but I was reading one. I finished it. I used to read so when I was in Germany, I read 100 books a year for a few years. It was pretty crazy. I think this last year I only did like 15, so it's much less. I don't know, it's just not gripping me as much. But there was one about long-term capital management. Did you hear about this? Do you know about this?
No, what is it?
So long-term capital management was a hedge fund in the 90s. I think it existed from like 96 to 99. And it was kind of this mathematicians. It was put together by like mathematicians and, you know, quantifiers or whatever, like the analysts
Yeah.
of Wall Street. And this was like their first like big hurrah. Everything up until that point, hedge funds were kind of like gut based things, like, oh, I believe this is going to go this way. But these guys actually used numbers and math and like complicated stuff. Nobody understood what they were doing. And then they were leveraged out the wazoo, and they had so much money, you know, in bonds and everything like this. Anyways, there was a Russian default of like their currency, and um it crashed their company, and they had like $1 trillion under management or something like this, and it went down to zero in like a month or two. And
Wow.
it was going to take down the whole like financial sector, and a bunch of banks had to bail them out, and even like the government and everything like this. It was just like a train wreck, and it was so interesting to read. And like because they had hubris, they were very proud of themselves, like, and they wouldn't even talk to anybody else because they're like, oh, we're smarter, we're mathematicians, you guys don't even understand what we're talking about. And then like making things more complicated. And then yeah, just completely crash and burn. And a lot of that actually, so that was like 99, like I said, about that time. But one of the companies didn't play ball. I can't remember who it was. They kind of pulled out and they left everybody hanging. And so everybody else lost like, I don't know, $250 million extra compared, you know, because they all put like, okay, we're gonna lose money. Let's put in $250 million each, and let's save this, and you know, we won't like crash and burn with them. And they were the ones that didn't play ball. And then in the 2008 crisis, those were the only ones. I can't remember who it was. Maybe Bear Stearns or something like this. That was the one that collapsed. Or that was the one that the other bankers let collapse
Mm.
because they kind of had this long memory maybe. And so yeah, it was crazy like how this crazy hedge fund later was able to have effects a decade later. But yeah, it was fascinating because it was just it's a train wreck, you know, and
Yeah.
they're literally going like day by day, and it's like, okay, and then they had this meeting, and and then they lost $50 million on this day, on one day, and then another $200 million this weekend. It was like, whoa, this is crazy. So yeah, that was a really cool book.
And it's called the what again?
Oh God, I can't remember. I'll have to look this up. 1 second.
Okay. I'll just cut out the dead space. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Oh, When Genius Failed, the rise, I don't know, okay. The rise and fall of long-term capital management. It was really good.
Sweet. Well, check it out. I think a book related to that topic would be like The Black Swan for you. This is basically what they're talking about in terms of like not seeing something coming.
Well, and I think that's what it's based off of.
Okay.
I've read Black Swan, and I think Anti-Fragile is also a really good book by Nassim Taleb. But that's basically what he's writing about, and that is what popularized all this stuff. This long tail, Black Swan events, and that's what long-term capital management was saying. Is like, oh, this is like a 1 in 1,000-year thing. But they were assuming a different statistical probability curve and all this kind of stuff, and essentially looking at it like a computer versus the market is an emotional thing run by emotional people. And so, yeah, that's not something that was 1 in 1,000 years. It's more like 1 in 10 years. And yeah, those guys lasted about 4 years. So it's about right on par with how long they should have survived.
Makes sense. Is there, outside of BCI, is there anything that's holding your attention? Like anything that you're learning about?
Yeah, I mean, my family does investing, so like flipping houses and stuff like this. So I'm getting into Airbnbs, and that's a lot of fun. I bought like a trailer and put it on my property, and like renting it out and everything like this. So I don't know, it's kind of fun, and it's a nice way to train your like entrepreneurial / like business minded brain in a nice way, and you make money too, so it's nice. But yeah, that's been fun. But yeah, I don't know. Neurotech is kind of consuming a lot of my time nowadays. So, but it's good. I like it.
Are you one of the Airbnb hosts that has like, apparently there's a lot of them that have like crazy stipulations, like they have to clean up, do the dishes, like walk the dog. Like, have you heard of these things?
I have heard. I've heard some like I've seen some like joke videos about that, like where in a hotel you can like almost like leave poop smeared on the walls or something like this, and it is completely fine. But yeah, like you move like one plant or something like this, plant branch or something like this, then a tree branch, then yeah. No, I think I'll be one of the more chill ones, the more lenient ones.
That's good. And then the last question is, do you have a newsletter? We know you have a podcast. What are some things you want to leave us with? Anything that we can do to keep up with Laden and his journey of neurotech discovery?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is subscribing to the podcast and listening in, and if you find a guest that you like, then do that, and then share it. If you want to share it. I am thinking about putting together. Actually, I want to talk. I guess this will be interesting to talk about. I want to put together like a Slack channel for it, for the podcast, and that way I could even be like, oh, I'm having this and this person on. What questions should I ask? Because I have talked to some fans at conferences and everything like this, and they're like, oh, you didn't ask this question to this person. Like, well, I didn't know, or like there's only so deep that I can go for each guest. So but I was thinking something like that could be cool, and then maybe do giveaways and everything like this. So yeah, how do you keep in contact? Because I don't want to do email newsletter, but like a Slack channel might be fun, and you can share memes and everything like this. So yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it'd be interesting if you have enough people who are excited for it. It might be another thing that you have to manage, though, in case people are starting to post whatever, or someone signs up and they don't care. It might make more sense to make it have like a Patreon, and where like the patrons get in. That way, there's some sense of a selection bias there in terms of like who's in, like how committed they are. And then it would be then a little bit more worth your time if there are problems. Because a community at a certain size is like a baby that you have to water and take care of, and hear the flags of people, posting about Trump or this election or that election and peaches or something. I don't know. So there's upside definitely in terms of like making a community, and that's what everyone should be doing in one form or another. So I like that you're going in that direction. I have a basic newsletter. Honestly, I could be doing better on this as well. But if I were to do it, and if I was thinking about doing it, I would probably find a way to, raised the bar a little bit in terms of like having like a pay in, so that people are taking it seriously, and then at the same time have a very strict content moderation in terms of like, one strike and then you're banned, so that other people don't have to really be affected by it too much. Then again, like you're in the academia, so you probably have a much better filter for handling situations like that than me. I just like making it very clear so it's an even playing field for everybody. But I think it's powerful. It's a very powerful concept.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. Because yeah, with the newsletter, it's basically again you're talking, you're speaking in a void, but this is like more two-way conversations. And I don't know, I'm not too worried about I guess spam posts and trolls and everything like this. I don't think it'll be that big. I don't think it'll be hundreds of people trying to have a conversation simultaneously. But yeah, that is a good way to do that. At some point is if it does get unruly, then you can have kind of a paid version. There is one Slack channel from a company called Neurotech X, and it's more like general BCI and everything like this. But it's got like 6,000 people in it or something like this, and it's just a lot to follow. And so something like that. If mine ever got to that size, I might have like a paid version that maybe only has a few hundred people, and then that way you can actually manage this and follow all the conversations every day.
That makes sense. Yeah. If it gets to a point where it's too much, there was a person who I was advising who was having like, they had a lot of opportunity and they didn't know how to like decipher it down. And so I was like, so you have a lot of people coming in and you're already making a lot of money. Just charge for your consultations. Like, don't make it like a free meeting. And then like the people who want to talk to you just halved itself. You just have a supply and demand problem. Just like, change the price and see what happens.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to do it.
Thank you for joining us today with the Learn with Lowell show. Check us out at learnwithlowell.com. Anywhere podcasts can be found, subscribe. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Check us out on YouTube in particular. That's a new thing I'm doing. Timestamps and links are in the show notes. Thank you for coming, and I hope every one of you found something today that you're curious about to learn more about, and you'll go out and be curious and learn something new. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.